I call the meeting to order. Welcome to the meeting number 69 of the Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs. The committee is meeting today to continue its study on the report of the Federal Electoral Boundaries Commission for Ontario 2022. We have with us today Vance Badaway, MP Niagara Centre, Tony Baldinelli, MP Niagara Falls, and Peter Fragiscados, MP London North Centre. You will each have up to 4 minutes for an opening statement, after which we will proceed to questions from committee members. With that, we'll start with you, Mr. Badaway. Welcome to PROC.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and it's a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate the time that you've given all three of us. First, as well, I want to take the opportunity to ensure that the mindset that we begin with is one of fairness. Niagara South provides a fair electoral map to you today for the riding's voters, and fairness and balance is what we are seeking, Madam Chair. And this is the reason for our presentation, supporting the Mayor as well as the Mayor's City Council and the community in terms of keeping the City of Thorold whole by adding their City Hall, regional headquarters, and the Canada Games Park back into the same riding as the city's population. Madam Chair, currently the division between the ridings of Niagara Centre and the City of St. Catharines largely follows Glendale Avenue in the City of St. Catharines. The border has been moved as part of the realignment process undertaken by the Electoral Boundary Commission, largely to account for the large electoral size of my friend here's riding, the riding of Niagara Falls. Western Hill and South St. Catharines, including PROC University, currently exist within the boundaries of my riding, Niagara Centre. The first draft, an initial proposal by the Commission, would have placed the urban area of Thorold with the expanded riding of Niagara West. In this initial proposal, the new boundary between Niagara West and St. Catharines would have followed the municipal boundary between the City of St. Catharines and the neighbouring community of the City of Thorold. The latest draft proposal was updated to reflect input from the community, with Thorold, and by the way, the 8th fastest growing city in Canada, continuing to belong to the new riding of Niagara South. A bump was, however, introduced along their northern municipal boundary, as you can see on your map. The bump removed Canada Games Park, which is presently on the grounds of PROC University. It also removed Niagara Regional Headquarters from the Niagara South riding and Thorold City Hall, all located within the City of Thorold. Upon speaking with the Mayor of Thorold, his preference on behalf of the community is to maintain the existing northern boundary between the City of St. Catharines and the City of Thorold to ensure his community is whole and to be represented with continuity by their Member of Parliament, and consistent, I might add, with all 4 ridings in Niagara. There is no logical reason to gerrymander the north boundary separating the City of St. Catharines and the City of Thorold. Once again, all ridings in Niagara remain within their municipal boundaries. In conclusion, Madam Chair, we support the Mayor and the City of Thorold's request that Thorold be made whole and place the riding's dividing line consistent with all 4 ridings within the region of Niagara, where the municipal boundaries currently exist. In this case, between the City of St. Catharines and the City of Thorold, along St. David's Road, which becomes Sir Isaac Brock Way as it travels to the west of the roadway. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Badaway. Mr. Baldinelli, welcome.
Good morning, colleagues. It's a pleasure to be with all of you today. I'm here for 2 reasons. First, to object to the name change of the Niagara Falls riding, which is contained within the Electoral Boundary Commission report for Ontario. The Commission proposes to change the riding name from Niagara Falls to Niagara North. And second, with the support of our local mayors, I'm also here to propose that the riding now be called Niagara Falls, Niagara on the Lake. Regarding the Commission's proposed name change of Niagara to Niagara North, I object for the following reasons. First, the riding name Niagara North is both inaccurate and confusing. Geographically, the north area of Niagara stretches along the entire length of the shoreline of Lake Ontario. This area transcends across many municipal boundaries, including those municipalities and adjacent federal ridings, such as the ridings of St. Catharines and the riding of Niagara West. All of this area can be considered Niagara North. Second, it seems to me that the riding name may have been proposed by the Commission to conveniently counterbalance the newly renamed riding Niagara South, which was formerly called Niagara Centre. However, it does not accurately reflect the close connections the 2 communities of Niagara Falls and Niagara on the Lake share, nor does it relate to or resonate in any way with the local populace that reside in these communities. Instead, I'm suggesting by way of my proposal, the riding now be called Niagara Falls, Niagara on the Lake. and I do so for the following reasons. First, there are only 2 municipalities within the boundaries of this riding, so this proposed name is short and descriptive to accurately reflect that of those 2 communities. Second, both Niagara Falls and Niagara-on-the-Lake are municipalities that are popular tourism and culinary and wine destinations, and they share a unique historical bond in being the home to the largest number of War of 1812 battlefield sites anywhere in this country. By recognizing both of their names in the riding name, it honors them in this regard, and it highlights their significance and place in Canada. Third, the town of Niagara-on-the-Lake has never been included in a federal riding name for the area. So by adding the town's name to the riding name, it better represents and honors what I am proud to say is the first capital of Upper Canada and a community which has become known as the prettiest town in Canada. And lastly, in terms of the order of sequence of the municipality names, Niagara Falls should be sequenced before that of Niagara-on-the-Lake because it is both larger in terms of population and economy, and it is Canada's #1 leisure tourism destination. And importantly, I wish to emphasize this proposal for the change has the support of both municipal mayors. So I thank you for this time this morning, and I'll take any questions following. Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you, Mr. Baldinelli. Mr. Peter Fragiscatos, the floor is yours. Welcome to PROC.
Thank you, Chair. I thought it was going to be civil here, but the prettiest community we all know is London, Ontario. So we'll leave that aside. Fine, you can have the town, I'll have the city. Thank you very much, colleagues. It's very interesting to address you from this point of view, obviously. C'est un plaisir pour moi.
It's a great pleasure for me to be here this morning.
Work that all of you have done on this specific issue. Since time is limited, let me get straight into it. While the Commission has redistributed ridings in London, Ontario in a way that ensures population numbers are within the desired range of 116,000 people, in my opinion, in the proposed London Centre, it has not met the requirement of abiding by an equally important principle, that every effort be made to ensure that communities of interest remain intact. The objection submitted here stems from this concern, one shared not only by myself, but the city's mayor and various community members. A few examples illustrate the point. Neighborhoods that have enjoyed a connection for several decades will now, should the proposed changes go through, be severed and placed into a different riding. One example is the Stony Brook area. Residents within this geographic region use the same high schools, the same community center, the same shopping centers, and overlapping fire and ambulance services. Equally important is the fact that approximately 37,000 Londoners will now live in a rural riding, the proposed Middlesex London, that would be separated from the rest of London. This means their ability to raise concerns and common cause with fellow urban citizens is significantly diminished, if not done away with altogether. As stated by Josh Morgan, London's mayor, quote, "My main concern is centered around the reconfigured riding of Middlesex London. Under this scenario, approximately 37,000 Londoners would lose a dedicated federal representative based in London. These constituents have distinct and unique urban concerns, which are difficult to reconcile alongside those of predominantly rural areas. London is a city indeed with a unique identity, concerns, and challenges. All communities are. We are not talking, however, about a few hundred urban citizens moving into a rural riding, but 37,000 people. Carving off such a large portion of the city simply is inappropriate, if not irresponsible. I do not discount for a moment the challenge facing the Commission, and I do appreciate their work. Yet it appears that they have placed undue weight on the population quota and not enough importance on keeping intact established communities of interest, as we see in the most recent proposal for London Centre. In solving problems identified in other riding proposals, the Commission has created a new and I think a serious one. The first proposal released by the Commission in the summer of 2022 did not break communities of interest in the proposed London Centre. Furthermore, its population quota was within the range they set as acceptable. As such, I think it should serve as the alternative. This certainly would have an effect on neighboring ridings. I'm not discounting that. I've also raised this objection with each area MP. I'm happy to discuss these matters further during the allotted time for questions. Thank you very much, colleagues, for considering the objections that I'm raising. on behalf of constituents, on behalf of the city's mayor. It's a true pleasure to be at the committee today.
Thank you. It's a true pleasure to have you here. We will start our 6-minute round, starting with Mrs. Gladue. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today. I'm going to start off with a little bit of background for you. As the lead for the Ontario Conservatives on this, I attended almost every one of the public hearings. So I heard a lot of the discussion and feel that the commissioners did really listen to people that showed up. So I'm going to start with Mr. Baldinelli because he's looking for a name change. And the commission was very open to name changes. There were a couple of them that were objected to in the first round. Penetanguishene was the rename for Simcoe North, and they reverted and listened to them. Another one that was disputed was Huron Bruce became South Huron Shores, and that was protested. And so they were open to name changes. And so, Mr. Baldinelli, you want to change this riding to Niagara Falls and Niagara-on-the-Lake, which makes sense to me. I used to live down there, and the only two things that are now in your riding is Niagara Falls and Niagara-on-the-Lake. Would you say that the other councillors and mayors that are associated are comfortable with the naming?
I'd like to thank my colleague for the question, and yes, I have letters of support from both mayors of my communities, the Lord Mayor in the town of Niagara-on-the-Lake, as well as the mayor in the city of Niagara Falls. So I've discussed it both with them, and then as soon as they were aware that I would like to come forward, they presented letters of support for that.
Thank you. And to Mr. Badaway. So in your riding, I know that the meetings that were held in St. Catharines were focused around making sure that Brock University remained whole was one of the messages that came. And I know that in your writing, in your submission, you talked about how the Niagara Regional Office is there. And I think, the Niagara Regional Office services Niagara West, Niagara South, all of them. So it doesn't make as much difference. But I see that Thorold has been a bit split up because of the population. They couldn't put any more in St. Catharines. They couldn't put too much more in yours. And so I wondered, did you seek the opinion of the member for St. Catharines, Chris Biddle, in terms of what you're proposing?
Absolutely. Chris has been part of the process and made a presentation, I'm sure at the presentation that you were aware of. He made a presentation and made his thoughts known. Essentially, it's a very simple ask. When we look at the line as you have in front of you, again, as I mentioned in my presentation, there is really no logical reason to gerrymander that northern boundary separating the city of St. Catharines and the city of Thorold. All I'm asking is to have that line just continue down as it does in the east, as it does in the west, in the middle there, to just simply continue down straight, not to make that little bump as they made. And that bump, by the way, takes out the city hall in Thorold. It takes out regional headquarters, which was deliberately built in the city of Thorold to be in the middle of the region, as well as in a smaller community, to give some respect to smaller communities throughout all 12 municipalities throughout Niagara. And of course, the Canada Games Park, which is the tail end of Brock University property, which also services the city of Thorold with their 2 rinks and the rest of the services that are contained within that facility. So
Okay.
again,
I just have a brief amount of time. So if I look at the street that the Thorold City Hall is on, the difficulty is that there's a bunch of Brock University residences there, the Foundry, I think it's called. And so do you see any way of sort of resolving those two things, trying to keep the Brock community whole, at the same time gives Thorold their city hall? Yeah, it is. Okay. So how many people will be added to your riding? Because you're already at 132,396.
with this bump taken out, about 100 students that are part of that building that you refer to. So essentially, when you look at that bump, and knowing, you have to see the area from above. You're looking down at it. It's all Thorold. You have the residences here. You have City Hall, and you have the regional headquarters, and you have the Canada Games Park. So they're all right there within the city of Thorold along that roadway. It's very hard to sort of do this, and so again, all we're asking for is just to continue that consistent with the city's boundary, between the
good.
city of St. Catharines and Thorold.
And now to
goes
Mr.
straight down.
Fragiscato. So I did attend the London public hearing. It's unfortunate that Mr. Fragiscatos wasn't there because Ariel Carabago was there and Lindsay Matheson was there and Karen Vecchio was there and they were all, having their say. And interestingly, Justice Leach, one of the commissioners, is from London. And so what they consistently heard at that public hearing was that they hated the first redraw with the rural-urban mixes. There was about three of those. And what they asked for was 3 urban ridings in London. So that's what the commission sort of has tried to do. Now, the reason that they picked the 37,000 and put them into the other one was there wasn't quite enough people to make 4 urban ridings, and they wanted to make sure there was enough demographic of the urban part that got put into Middlesex, London. So that was sort of the reasoning behind that. Did you speak to any of the surrounding MPs about the proposal you have?
Well, thank you, Ms. Gladue. Well, first of all, I wasn't attending because I had parliamentary obligations. You would understand that. Sometimes we have to be here in Ottawa, and it's unavoidable. We can't make certain events, important as that was. I just couldn't be there. But I certainly know Londoners were there that held an important point of view, a point of view that says that communities of interest must remain intact. This is a principle, colleagues, as you know, the Supreme Court has commented on. It is not as if it is a suggestion. This is an obligation. And so I come at the issue from that perspective, Ms. Gladue. Yes, I did consult with regional MPs. Some are ambivalent on the matter. Others disagree with my perspective. That's democracy. I would ask you, Ms. Gladue, to put yourself into my shoes and representing these thousands of people that are now put into another riding, a community of interest. And I mentioned Stony Brook. It's the brooks that are, if anyone knows London, they'll know what the brooks are. Stony Brook would be separated from Donnybrook, Philbrook, Pennybrook, Bobbybrook. If you might ask about the names. Apparently there's I don't know if it's an urban myth or if it's reality. They take the name of the contractor that
thank you so much.
built the area. So I hope that answers your question.
Mr. Fragiscatos, thank you so much. I will now turn the floor over to Mr. Turnbull.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks to our witnesses for being here today, and we appreciate your testimony, and I've read your submissions. Mr. Badaway, maybe I'll go to you first, and then I do have some questions for Mr. Fragiscatos. You mentioned the word gerrymandering. That's a word that is sometimes used in these contexts, and you sort of did this with your hand, that it seems that they're sort of drawing the boundaries in a way that really doesn't make sense. And I think I wanted to just give you an opportunity to speak a little bit more to why you would call it gerrymandering.
Well, thank you, Mr. Turnbull. Simply because there's no logical reason for it. The boundary line that they're proposing is consistent to the east, it's consistent to the west, and for some reason right in the middle, they dip down and they carve out a part of the city of Thorold, which includes the city of Thorold's recreational facility, which is Canada Games Park, which is located on the grounds of PROC University, as well as Thorold City Hall and regional headquarters. And I have to say, and going back to Ms. Gladue's questions about trying to keep PROC University whole, that was never a concern with respect to our presentations to the Commission. Very consistent with Niagara College, for example. Niagara College belongs to Tony's riding and it belongs to my riding. Currently, and it's still going to be that way, both in Niagara Lake as well as in part of St. Catharines, quite frankly, close to the tip of it, as well as the city of Welland. So it's not like it's not inconsistent in Niagara to have two post-secondary institutions, the college and university, be belonging to 2 municipalities.
Thank you for that response, and maybe I'll go to Mr. Fragiscatos now. I read your submission. It seems like the initial proposal that was put forth by the Commission with regards to the northern boundary of your riding is, I think you were supportive of generally, and if I'm not mistaken, if I understand it correctly, because I'm not as familiar, obviously, with your riding as you are, but it sounds like the movement of that boundary has sliced out individuals that would normally have considered themselves part of an urban riding, who are now going to be part of London Middlesex or Middlesex London riding, which is predominantly rural. So can you speak to just, you know, because it's always hard for us to put ourselves in the shoes of the local MP that really understands the dynamics of the local community. Can you speak to your case a little bit more?
In principle, and thank you for the question, Mr. Turnbull, I have no problem with urban residents living in a rural riding. That does happen. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. As I said, though, we're talking about not 370 people. We're talking about 37,000. And I'm happy to table with the committee, Madam Chair, the map of the current London North Centre. I have highlighted, so this is the area of the Brooks that I talked about before. This part would be kept in the proposed London Centre, currently under consideration. This part would be lost, right? So as you see, this is a continuous community of interest, right? Again, I'm not you're a Whitby resident, so I'm not expecting you to know the ins and outs of London neighborhoods, but it is an established neighborhood in London, around for close to 40 years. The Commission, and I don't discount the challenge in front of it, has decided, unfortunately, to sever this community of interest. That is a very serious issue, and I think one that needs to be addressed.
Thank you. And what, like communities of interest hang together, there's sort of reasons why they associate. Can you give us a little bit more detail on why this is an established community of interest that should not be divided?
Of course, they share ambulance and fire services. They share shopping centers. They share schools. All the things that make a community, they share. And so if this was to be broken, I think that very important principle that this process needs to adhere to is broken by definition.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we've heard quite a lot at this committee, is that there's this tendency to, when you get an initial proposal that you actually agree with, not to speak out, because it's really, the consultation seems to be geared towards hearing objections. So it's no surprise then, even though, as you've said, you've had parliamentary duties, but in many other cases we've heard MPs not speaking out in that first initial proposal when they were in agreement with it. So this is sort of the stage at which you're able to express those concerns brought to you by your constituents, and we appreciate your time today. Do you want to speak to the flaws, potential flaws in the process itself?
Let me be clear, and interestingly, Ms. Glaudu did not include this in her comment. Although I wasn't at the hearing that took place, I did have, there were individuals representing myself who did voice their point of view, who did say that the initial proposal released in the summer of 2022 was a reasonable one, and it is. It adheres to the population quota of 116,000. It keeps communities of interest intact. I had no real challenges with that initial proposal. But in trying to solve concerns raised in other ridings, I think the Commission has created a new problem. And why haven't regional MPs spoken out? Some might be ambivalent, but some might be worried about upsetting the apple cart, so to speak. If they were to raise objections at this point, perhaps they're worried about the situation reverting to what was originally the case and their problems reappearing. So I think that explains some lingering questions that might exist.
Thank you. Madame Goudreau.
Ms. Gaudreau, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you to all of you. It's always a good experience to listen to our fellow MPs in committee. I'd like to give you an opportunity to speak about what might have been lacking in the process, as well as in the documentation that could have been provided. For example, earlier on, it was stated that it's important to take the pulse of the people involved. It's also important to have the support of the communities involved. So what I would like to know, if you have everything you need in order to be able to demonstrate the will of your citizens and elected representatives, so that our report can be consistent. We need to be vigilant, we need to listen, and we also need to be able to demonstrate what's happening on the ground. Now, I understand that one can't be in two places at once, but that being said, it's very important to be able to demonstrate that we are very aware of what's happening on the ground. And so I'd just like to say from the outset to Mr. Baldinelli that I am familiar with Niagara Falls and Niagara-on-the-Lake, and I do know that it's a microclimate there. And if I'm mentioning Niagara Falls, it's because that obviously these names do denote something. So that being said, I think you should come and visit the amazing climate we have in Mont-Tremblant. Perhaps you're already familiar with it. That's also an internationally known destination, so come anytime. Now, my first question would be this. Why, if these names, Niagara Falls and Niagara-on-the-Lake, resonate so much with the population, why do you think they suggested the name they did? Why Niagara North?
For the question. I think, and I mentioned this in my remarks, I think the Commission just sought to counterbalance the creation of the new riding my colleague will be now in, which will be now called Niagara South. And so to balance that, they've called my riding Niagara North. And during the Commission hearings, the public hearings that we both spoke to, there were a number of witnesses that came forward and proposed different names for our riding, you know, to touch upon the historical perspective. The Commission ultimately decided not to, and I think they did that, again, to take that notion of kind of countering the notion of Niagara South being created. But I'm here today to talk about the notion of why that shouldn't be done. Because, I mean, the term Niagara North is kind of an innocuous statement. You could live in Niagara-on-the-Lake. You could live in St. Catharines. You can live in Jordan. You can live in Beamsville. You can live in Grimsby. You can live in Winona, all part of the Niagara region, and you would be considered living in Niagara North. And so what I'd like to do is have a better name that reflects the two communities, that commonalities, the communities of interest. Again, Niagara-on-the-Lake, we're home to the greatest concentration of War of 1812 sites anywhere in this country. Battlefield sites in both ridings. We are Canada's wine region. Not only the grape growers and the wineries in Niagara-on-the-Lake, but the largest production facility for wine in this country is in Niagara Falls. So I spoke to our community members as well as our local mayors, and with their support, I mean, the riding will be the entirety of those two municipalities. And so I thought it was a great idea to call it Niagara Falls and Niagara-on-the-Lake.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I'd like to give Mr. Fragiskatos, is that how one represents it? Yes. How one pronounces it? Yes, that's perfect. Perhaps there's a part of you that's Greek? Perhaps. I'll find out. My question is this. Is there any supplementary information that you think should be tabled or that you should table so that in our report we have everything we need in order to be able to convince the commissioners of the changes you're proposing? Because you mentioned that there were 37,000 individuals who would be affected. Now, I'm not familiar with what these demographic changes represent or what any further demographic changes there will be. But what I'd like to know is if you have any supplementary information to provide, and do you have the time to do that before our report is tabled? You can answer in French if you like. Perhaps. Thank you for the question. Listen, for me, this is an issue of democracy. For example, take the perspective of our mayor, for example. This is a very important perspective. It's a very important statement on his part for our community, and he stated it very clearly.
And when you have a community of interest that is severed, I've emphasized this point many times, but this is a key principle in all of this, then you have a problem. Some might ask if I'm kind of coming at this from a partisan perspective. It does not affect my interests electorally one way or the other. The initial proposal the numbers are the same. Basically, there might be some percentage difference, but I'm not doing it for partisan reasons. I think that that needs to be made very, very clear. So I'm happy to table with you the map that I talked about, where the community is being, where it's clear that the community is being completely severed in half. I'm happy
I
to.
thank you for
Sure.
that submission, and the clerk looks forward to receiving it, and we will share it with all members. Excellent. Offer made and accepted. Mrs. Blaney, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much, Chair, and I thank everybody that's here testifying today. My first question is for Mr. Badaway. So there's already been questions asked around the Brock University campus and the fact that it's split between the two ridings. And I know you mentioned that the commission was trying to keep the campus of the Brock University together in one riding. So I'm just curious, have you done any work with that area to find out how the students feel and what the impacts will be on them to continue to be split? It seems like there was an interest to bring them together, and I'm wondering why that doesn't seem to be a major concern for you.
In talking to the mayor and the council, they've had a lot of those discussions from what I understand. And in the area, when you look at the student population isn't just contained within the area of which they're cutting out within that boundary change. So when you look at the city's limit and you look at that piece, there's about 100 students in there within a newly created student residence. However, there are student residences all over the city of Thorold, as well as the city of St. Catharines. So they're throughout the community. The bottom line, Ms. Blaney, is the fact of, there was a lot of changes made when they first proposed our riding. And I'm quite happy with what they're proposing now. We had the city of Thorold split in three when they first proposed. Now they have it somewhat whole. However, all we're asking for is just to keep the boundary consistent with the municipal boundary, as is consistent with all four ridings throughout the region for the most part. So when you look at, to your question, the consultation with the students, we're looking at basically the entire Brock University keeping whole, except for the recreation facility that services the city of Thorold. Other than that, the rest of the campus is in the city of St. Catharines and the St. Catharines riding, as well as the residence that's right next to City Hall in Thorold. That would be captured in my riding alongside a lot of residences that are throughout the city of Thorold.
Thank you. So I'm going to come, sorry, there's an echo, to Mr. Fracascados. I hope I said it correctly. I'm really struggling with your intervention today. Based on the research that I did, it really sounded like when the first Ontario proposal was released, a lot of Londoners were very unhappy about the proposed changes. And there was a lot of people that came forward to advocate against the initial proposal from a large range of people, different community groups, sectors, and all levels of government, all three. So I'm really struggling to completely understand, because we are hearing now that while not everyone is entirely happy with the report, the majority is actually more pleased with the current report than they were with the last one. So I'm just wondering if you could explain sort of your perspective on this, and it's going to have a big impact on those other ridings. And it sounds like the other folks that are representing those ridings are not really supporting what you're bringing forward. So would you agree that the initial proposal raised more concerns with Londoners than the current proposal that we are looking at now?
Thank you for the question. There were voices, certainly, that participated in the first process that raised objections, Ms. Blaney, many from NDP riding associations, but I leave that aside. I would also point to the fact that when a community's mayor speaks out, that says ample, that speaks volumes about how the community feels on this particular issue. It is a difficult job that the Commission had. I would just ask that they go back and revisit what they have presented, because there is a very important need to ensure, yes, adherence to a population quota, but also to assure adherence to the community's of interest principle.
Well, thank you, Chair. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you, Mrs. Blaney. We'll now continue with Ms. Rood.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, witnesses, for being here. Mr. Fragostakis, as you mentioned earlier in your remarks, you actually implied that if someone resided in the City of London, they wouldn't be as well represented because you're adding a part of a rural riding. And as somebody who currently represents Lambton, Kent, Middlesex, and I'm set to represent Middlesex, London as my new riding, I can speak on behalf of many of my constituents who reside in Middlesex County to the fact that the rural population actually has a huge connection to the City of London in this particular area. And our rural communities are actually an urban support network. And in fact, the Middlesex County Council chambers are located in downtown London. And so I'm just wondering, when you look at shared services, and you did mention shared services, and that these communities of interest would lose their shared services, I would beg to say on the flip side of that, the county itself uses some of those same services, including healthcare, the shopping centers, medical care, paramedics, et cetera. And so I'm just wondering if you can comment on how, with this new change right now, why you would want to revert back to not having the urban part, and why you don't think that somebody who was born in London, who went to college in London, and who already represents all around the City of London, right up to the border of the City of London, why those folks wouldn't feel that they would be a part of the new riding?
Thank you, Ms. Rood, for the question. On your comments relating to shared services, I would simply ask you to raise those objections to those that live in the Brooks and see what they say. And in principle, I, of course, have no problem with a member of Parliament representing an urban area and a rural area. Karen Vecchio does a superb job of it. And I know she's your colleague. You respect her very much. She's an example of how an MP can balance both. But I would simply go back to the fact that we're talking about, Ms. Rood, 37,000 people. And I'm sure you would be a good member of Parliament for those people. This is not I don't mean to, and I don't think I have, made this a personal issue. I simply am taking my cue from residents who, and I think it's fair, want to be represented by an urban MP because they see themselves first and foremost as Londoners. And the mayor feels the same way. Like the mayor of London, the chief executive of the municipality. When he speaks out, I think we have to listen, Ms. Rood. So I don't discount your ability to represent. In fact, I would invite you to come to more London events. I'm sure we'd love to see you down there, because I haven't seen you at many London events in the past 7 or 8 years when I've been at
I'm sure you will. Chair, I did want to say a few things about some of the people that made submissions that we're not going to get to hear from before the final draft report. Michael Chong had a submission where basically in his riding, where the boundary is redrawn, there's 3 houses that pay taxes to the municipality that got excluded. So he's asking that they be made whole. I don't object to that. I know Irene Kazmarchuk wants a name change as well to add Lakeshore into his Windsor-Tecumseh name. And it makes sense because he's got a huge portion of the Lakeshore. So again, I don't have an issue with that. And then there were a number of MPs that wrote in to say that they liked the redrawn maps. And I think if the committee is going to put in any commentary on what we could do to improve the process, that it might be worthwhile to allow people to, there's really no forum to do anything but object, but it might be a good idea to have an ability for people to be able to say, yeah, I think this map is okay, so that it's validation for the commissioners that they did a reasonable job. How much time do I have left?
50 seconds.
50 seconds. Okay, well, I'm going to give the 50 seconds back to you. I think I'm good. Thanks.
Thank you. I will just say, as per the legislation, my understanding that has been given to me by the experts in the room is that an objection can be for or against. Hence why so many people have provided submissions in support of. To reiterate your point, there is many colleagues who recognize that PROC has been seized with many activities, and therefore, as long as they are responding to the clerk and analysts, letting them know that They're basically providing back our time, that they support the recommendation. In the case of Mr. Chong, it's about 3 houses. I have been assured that they will be reported back in the report, and the committee will get to see the drafting of it. So I appreciate you raising that, and there is more members from Ontario than have been listed, and we do provide the same ability to all members, and we appreciate them acknowledging that if it's a riding name change or in support, that there is another way of doing it, and so we will make sure that they are represented within our report. I will now, Monsieur Fergus, à vous la parole.
Mr. Fergus, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And thank you to all my colleagues who are appearing today, Mr. Baldinelli and Mr. Badaway. I think your concerns have been well established. Mr. Fragiskatos, you also had a good presentation. However, it appears that some question some of the points you have raised. You referred to the Mayor of London. What is his opinion on these changes?
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Fergus, for the question.
L'approche de
Our mayor's approach is, I think, a very fair one. Equity and equitable and fairness.
And yes, for each action there is a reaction. And so when you call for changes, it does raise the very real possibility, if not certainty, that it affects other ridings. But what am I to do, and what is the mayor to do when we have a community that has been together for decades that would now be separated? This is, again, I emphasized this in the last answer, it's not personal. It should not be personal. This is about representing the interests of constituents, thousands of people who have lived together in neighborhoods for many, many years, and were quite surprised by this proposal because, again, I emphasize in the initial proposal, Madam Chair, the community of interest was completely intact. There was no community of interest broken in the first proposal raised, at least for the proposed London Centre.
You know, I don't know London, obviously, as well as you do, but I do know my region, and I've seen what happens when you put in a sizable amount of an urban riding into a rural setting. Mm-hmm. It's so much easier to spend a lot of time in that urban part just because of the demographic weight is there. The door knocking is a lot easier. Some of the issues speak to it. It's hard to find that right balance. 37,600 people. That's a pretty. That would be at least 25% of any ridings population. Can you comment on that?
Well, the Commission has the point of view that this change is acceptable because, as they put it, and I'm quoting now, the inclusion of urban Londoners in the proposed Middlesex London would add, quote, significant demographic weight to that riding. I don't believe it would. I think they would be vastly outnumbered. And the mayor feels the same way. I think his point of view, well, I know his point of view, is that Londoners need to be represented by London-based MPs. We have the fastest growing community in Ontario, the fourth fastest growing community, Mr. Fergus, in all of Canada. To see 37,000 people put into a predominantly, if not overwhelmingly, rural riding, I think raises real challenges from a representation point of view that the mayor has put on the record and that I'm voicing here.
That's a very good point. It's such a good point. You've distracted me from what from my next question that I want to ask, and I'm just trying. I was going through it, trying to go through my head to try to remember the point which I want to make. But let's go back to what you just said in terms of it would be vastly outweighed. What alternative could there possibly be that wouldn't be able to create that kind of a situation?
Simply put, the initial proposal. The initial proposal which did not break any community of interest, which put the population at a very reasonable number, very much in line with the quota.
Just one last question then, if I could. By making these changes that you have, and this coming after the process, can you speak to the whole process of redistribution? Is there perhaps a better way? Oops, very briefly.
Yes, we took part in the process from start to finish. There was far too much attention given to the quota requirement versus communities of interest. And so that needs to be absolutely revisited by any future commission, without question, among other things we could talk about.
Thank you. Madame Goudreau?
Ms. Goudreau. Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, most of my questions have been answered, and I would say once again that the PROC committee has to think about criteria and relative weight. In fact, we have to really think about our process so that commissioners can take these factors into account when they're making changes. I don't have much to add, but I did want to say to Mr. Fragis that I have no Greek ancestors, but I do have good friends who I say mourilatos to.
C'est tout.
And that's all.
Merci beaucoup.
Well, thank you very much.
I have no further questions.
That is excellent. I think we are very content with the information you have provided us today, colleagues, and we thank you for your time and attention. As has been mentioned, anything else you would like the committee to consider, please do send it to the clerk, and the clerk will share it with all colleagues. Once again, anything that is provided to our committee, we don't get to pick and choose. Everything goes back to the commission. So it is always valuable for you to provide us information. With that, we will say have a great day to you all as we have another panel, and we will suspend real quick and ask the next panel to join us. There is about 10 minutes before the next panel, so we might suspend a little bit longer than usual, but I see a hand up. Mrs. Blaney?
Well, I'm sure everybody can grab a snack. I'm not there to do that. But I do have a question about the fact that I know we sent out a letter requesting a couple of witnesses to come, and it's been about a week. So I just wanted to check in and see if we've had a response to that.
I actually asked the same question. I can confirm the letter was sent out on Friday, the day following the subcommittee meeting, and we have not yet received a response to that. And that was a letter in regards to the motion and having Mr. Solomon and Ms. Michaud testify or appear to committee. They have not provided their availability, or they've not acknowledged receipt of the letter yet. Mrs. Blaney?
Well, thank you for that. I'm just wondering what the normal process is and how long we should be waiting and before we take further steps. I think this study is very important, and those witnesses are required for us to do the work that we need to do. So I'm just looking for advice on if the next step is to perhaps send a letter to summon them, or if we should wait another couple of days. I don't think we need to wait a significantly long time. We have sent a couple of invitations now and a specific invitation, and it feels like we're not getting a response, and that concerns me. Love to hear from the rest of the committee.
I see Mrs. Sahoda's hand up. I can confirm, once, as we always say, it's up to members to decide their path forward and how they would like to move. And so if members of the committee are choosing that we would like to escalate it, then members would choose. It's similar to what we did in the subcommittee where we had not received a response. Perhaps a person had declined the invitation and then we chose to reiterate our point by sending a letter. So if members would like to do that, that would be up to members. Mrs. Sahoda's hand is up.
Yeah, I think we have some options before us, and it's worth discussing amongst the committee what our next steps are. How do we? I'm interested in hearing from the witnesses. So, what do the committee members, because the chair has just said it's up to the committee really, think the next step should be? Should it be a more sternly worded letter, or should it be a summons to this committee? What action should we be taking?
Mr. Turnbull?
I just wanted to express my support for the concerns that Ms. Blaney expressed, and I think we do need to be considering next steps. I do feel like the testimony of certain witnesses is needed. I know I have very specific questions for some of the witnesses that have not responded thus far, and that I think it is germane to our study, and we've all identified foreign election interference as such an important topic today. We're constantly reminded of how important this is, and I think we, in a real effort to get to the truth and the bottom of the issue and to do a thorough job, we need those witnesses to appear. So I just wanted to express my support for what Ms. Blaney was sharing in terms of concerns.
Seeing no other hands up, I think what I'm hearing is that committee members do want to have a discussion as to how we want to proceed. And I do know that the House is not sitting tomorrow. I do know we have a heavy agenda next week. Some of our requests for extra time have been approved. So not only will we be meeting on Tuesday morning, our normal slot, we will be meeting on Tuesday evening as well as on Thursday. And we're just slotting in witnesses, including those witnesses who were not able to join us on Tuesday evening. And then we will have a new status of who is outstanding and not outstanding and what we've received as responses, so committee can have a sense of how much time is needed for everyone to appear. So perhaps I would just suggest that committee members have some conversations on the side, and then we can see how we want to approach this. And if we need to adjust the schedule for next week, then we can do that accordingly to ensure that we do satisfy what feels to be the majority of the will to have witnesses testify so that we can actually get the information we're looking for. Did your hand go up, Mrs. Sahoda? Sorry.
It did go up, but I think the rest of what you've just stated has satisfied my need to come up with a resolution today. That's fine. We'll take the conversation to aside and come up with a solution for next meeting. Thank you.
I have Mrs. Blaney, followed by Madame Goudreau. Mrs. Blaney?
Well, thank you for that. So I guess I just need one bit of clarity, which is there an opportunity for us perhaps to put half an hour into this next week when we're meeting, if it can't be resolved offline? Because I just think that we need to get this done, and I don't know if it should be a strongly worded letter that we're going to say, if you don't, then we're going to do this, or if we should just move forward. It feels, I think if I have it correctly, we've already sent two letters, one making a request, the second one making a more forceful request. So maybe it is time to just move on to the summoning portion of this discussion.
Madame Goudreau?
Ms. Gaudreau, two concerns. My first is this. Given that we have this addition of Tuesday evening, and given what has happened last week, not only are we not moving as quickly as we should be, there are witnesses who were ready. And so my question is this. Does the Finance Committee take precedence? If the answer is yes, in which case, what should we do? Because I'm listening to the concerns of my colleagues to continue with this process. So that's my first concern. And my second one is, well, we need time to look at how we're planning this because time is running out.
I think the information I require for us to move forward is this a conversation we're looking to have in camera, or is this a public conversation? It's an in-camera conversation, correct? Good news. We have been given the extra hour on Tuesday morning from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. So what we can do is plan for an in-camera conversation for that hour. And if we finish early, then the witnesses that we have lined up for 11 to 1 will remain public meetings. And I think that will provide all members an opportunity to perhaps engage in conversations. It would also provide an opportunity for myself and the clerk to look at what the processes are that we would need to follow so that I can provide you the insights that you are requesting. So this conversation will continue in camera at 10 a.m. on Tuesday, May 9th. May the 4th be with you. With that, we're suspending for 5 minutes and we will continue with our second panel. Please stay tuned. Thank you.
to you all.
For
For our second panel today, we have with us Mr. Charlie Angus, member for Timmins James Bay, Carol Humes, MP for Algoma, Manitoulin, Kapuskasing, Viviane Lapointe, member for Sudbury, Marc Serré, member for Nickel Belt, Terry Sheehan, member for Sault Ste. Marie. You will each have up to 4 minutes to make your statement, after which we will move on to questions from the committee members. And Ms. Lapointe, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair, colleagues. I am here today in a dual capacity as chair of the Northern Ontario Liberal Caucus and as member of Parliament for Sudbury.
Northern Ontario Liberal Caucus. I would like to express our collective objection to the removal of an electoral district for Northern Ontario. This objection is not about politics. Rather, this objection is rooted in advocacy. Northern Ontario is unique from all other regions in Ontario, due largely to its immense landmass. In fact, Northern Ontario makes up 87% of Ontario's landmass. Reducing our representation to 9 elected officials creates undue hardship and inequitable access to MPs for the people of Northern Ontario. This undue hardship will also create greater challenges to attract young people, especially women, to consider running for Parliament. Landmass also affects communities of interest. Communities that are several hours apart may not have a common economy or shared issues. The loss of a seat may also have social and economic implications. Northern Ontario has unique characteristics, such as a large Indigenous population, and unique challenges, such as limited access to social services, healthcare, and education. These issues require targeted policies that address the specific needs of the region. Removing a seat from Northern Ontario would cut off an essential avenue for the region's voice to be heard. Going by a numbers-only formula actually creates further voter disparity. It increases the inequity and creates prejudice against rural and Northern Canadian communities. We believe the Commission understood this inequality by creating 2 ridings of extraordinary circumstances. While a legislative path may be the ultimate manner in which equitable representation can be achieved, we cannot accept that there are no measures the Commission can employ. We have seen precedents that address the issue of landmass. The 1985 Electoral Boundaries Readjustment Act provided for the Newfoundland and Labrador Commission to deviate from adherence to the quota in order to maintain a manageable geographic size for sparsely populated districts. In a vast country like ours, where each region has distinctive needs and priorities, representational equality is fundamental. The electoral district model is designed to ensure that citizens from each region are proportionally represented in the House of Commons. Any action that changes the number of seats provided to a region can affect its political representation entirely. In conclusion, reducing the number of seats in Northern Ontario is not the solution to any problem. Instead, it would create problems of its own by reducing the ability of the region's elected representatives to represent the interests of the people they serve. Thank you for listening. Je vous remercie de votre.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Mr. Angus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The redistribution proposal for Northern Ontario represents a massive disruption in political representation. It arbitrarily breaks apart communities of interest and is predicated on the fundamentally flawed proposition that even though that Northern Ontario's population has grown since the last boundary changes, it isn't growing as fast as the explosive population growth in suburban, urban Southern Ontario. And so from this flows a second false promise that rural Ontario is now somehow overrepresented in Parliament and must give up a seat to accommodate suburban, urban South. The impacts on the rights of rural residents to representation will be immense. Our ridings are already massive in area. My riding, circonscription, is bigger than France. These immense ridings actually have populations that are comparable or larger than many rural regions in Canada. My riding has the same size or is larger than 44 other ridings in the country, and yet I'm told that I don't have enough people in my riding to deserve representation. The issue we're concerned about is removing the riding of Algoma, Manitoulin, Kapuskasing is going to have a domino effect on already untenably large ridings that are difficult to represent. And our region of northeastern Ontario, with a population that is rural, Indigenous, and Franco-Ontarian, will never be able to keep up with the huge population growth expected in the coming years in southern Ontario. So if we accept the premise of this change, it means in future years, our regions will have to give up more seats in order to accommodate the expected growth. In the first round, the Boundary Commission stated its intention to create the riding of Kiiwetinoong-Mushkegowuk. This was an arbitrary line on the map that created a riding so massive you could fit 100 other Ontario seats into it. This was obviously a ridiculous proposition. So it was fair to expect that in the second round, the Commission would come up with minor changes and respond to feedback. The problem was they ignored consensus from across the region and presented in the second round equally dramatic and arbitrarily new boundary lines that are now threatening to break apart many of the regions and communities that have been together culturally, economically, socially for decades. In my riding, for example, the Commission ignored suggestions on how to increase population, and in the second round arbitrarily moved the line 130 kilometers north of where it is now, which cuts the Francophone region of Temiskaming in half and moves numerous communities out of their traditional center. And there is no consultation, and now there's no ability for those communities to speak, as this was done in the second round. The commissioners ignored their obligation, as laid out in Section 15(1)(b), that states that several factors must be considered, such as community of interest, of identity, or the historical pattern of electoral district in the province, a manageable geographic size for districts in sparsely populated rural and northern regions of the province, and that they have under Section 15(2) the right to depart from population parity in order to maintain manageable geographic size for districts in sparsely populated rural and northern regions of the province. We already suffer from a high level of political alienation in Northern Ontario. We are in a very fragile time for democracy, and we must do our best to reassure citizens that their voice counts and that they are being heard. This is why I recommend, along with my colleagues, status quo for the communities and electors in Northern Ontario.
Thank you. Mr. Sheehan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to the committee for allowing me to present an argument in favor of fair and equitable representation in Northern Ontario. As the committee members are aware, the Act permits the Commission to consider the relative geography size of the districts, particularly for remote communities, allowing for effective representation. This has been upheld in the Saskatchewan reference regarding provincial electoral boundaries, to quote. So this was respected when drawing some of the ridings in Northern Ontario, but not the new riding of Sault Ste. Marie-Algoma. Variances from the quota range from 10% below in Parry Sounds Muskoka to as much as 47% quota in the new Kenora riding. This has been proposed. So the new riding of Sault Ste. Marie-Algoma is only 2.4% below the variance, but the riding is much, much bigger than many. By population, the proposed changes to Sault Ste. Marie-Algoma riding will have comparable populations to many in the south, but by geography, it is much larger. In fact, it must be acknowledged that at least 9 of the proposed ridings in the City of Toronto and another 4 in the GTA have populations that are actually smaller than that of the proposed new Sault Ste. Marie-Algoma riding. For the 3 ridings in northwestern Ontario, the Commission declared special circumstances that allowed them to exceed the 25% variance, mostly leaving the region unchanged from existing boundaries. However, they ignored the same logic when drawing boundaries for the northeast, creating ridings that were both large in population and geography. These special circumstances should have been applied across Northern Ontario. In creating their revised recommendations, the Commission acknowledged that their original proposal for Kenora, Thunder Bay, Rainy River, they pointed out that the individual for Thunder Bay Rainy River, and I quote right out of the report, that the travel time would be substantial. A member of Parliament would need to travel over 1,000 kilometers to drive Highway 11 and Highway 17 to circuit from Thunder Bay to Rainy River and back again to Thunder Bay. However, in the new proposed Sault Ste. Marie-Algoma riding, to do the exact same thing that the Commission has proposed, it would be 1,300 kilometers to drive to serve the same area. Meanwhile, a place like Toronto Danforth, which has a much smaller population than the new proposal, it takes 10 minutes to drive across. So again, this is completely flawed logic that the Commission has placed in the final proposal. So it's clear that when designing this, the Commission did not use any of the latitude afforded to it to remote and geographic areas for these communities. In principle, I strongly believe that Northern Ontario should maintain its current 10 members, preferably adhering to the existing boundaries. So, as been mentioned, we are 90% of the geography of Ontario with about 6 to 8% of the population. So, going to communities of interest, this affects certainly rural and remote areas, Indigenous and Francophone communities. Following that, I would prefer that the Commission take another look at the region to make its vast remote regions more manageable. They need to acknowledge that special circumstances exist throughout the North, and they need to consult accordingly. Their final proposal, they did not consult any of the communities that have been affected, and that's wrong. And so it's flawed right from the get-go. So again, status quo, based upon their own logic for half of Northern Ontario, should be applied to all of Northern Ontario. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and we appreciate it as well. And now we will go to Mr. Serre.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the committee members for listening to us today. First of all, it's very difficult to go from 10 to 9 ridings. Number one, I agree with what everyone said to date, but I just want to start on a positive note. The Commission listened to the community in Gulgama, a small community, to retain it with Nickel Belt. That's a positive point. They also looked at the municipalities in Sudbury East. They kept those municipalities within Nickel Belt, as the 4 members expressed a wish for. So today I'm going to make 3 points, and you've received those 3 points. The first point, Nickel Belt was founded in 1952, and it included Nickel Centre, Wanup, Wanapate, Coniston, Garson, Falconbridge, and Skeed. These are rural areas. The Commission felt that these rural communities should be included with downtown Sudbury. So they're combining rural and urban, and there were earlier comments on that. There are letters from city councils, Mike Jacobo, Mr. McIntosh, the new city councillor, Nathalie Labbé. All these city councillors have said they want to keep these rural areas in Nickel Belt together rather than include them with an urban centre. There's also the issue of communities of interest and Francophone areas. Nickel Belt will go from 35% Francophone population down to 31%. So now, once upon a time, it was 25%, so it is better, but the Commission did not listen to these did not do enough for the Francophone community. I have no objections if Nickel Belt goes from 100,000 to 114,000. That's not a problem. But the second point I wanted to make is the name.
Been the Nickel Belt riding since 1952, and it's been 72 years, and the riding has changed. So the proposal here is to put Sudbury East, Manitoulin, Nickel Belt, and it's supported by the Sudbury East, Manitoulin Health Unit, because it's the same boundaries, and then the municipalities of Sudbury East, also SAMA, has a letter in the package indicating that the mayors and councils support the name change to reflect better the community. The last point, as on the commission here, and you've all heard from it's really devastating for us in Northern Ontario going from 10 to 9 seats. You know, we could get into the disenchantment of voters and the rural aspect. It's devastating for us, and also when you look at involving more, you know, MPs in the process. I guess the Commission had a mandate, a difficult mandate with one additional seat, but I'm asking PROC to really push back on this because, as indicated earlier by Charlie, the next round, Northern Ontario will be 8 seats. And because of the population of the 116, it's totally flawed, as indicated by Terry. 90% and Viviane, 90% of the geographic area of Ontario is Northern Ontario, and you could add more monies to a riding that represent 140. Rudy, we could add more monies for 2 staff, but you can't add more money to get more MPs to represent a large area. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll be really happy to answer questions.
We can't wait to ask you questions. Thank you for that. Mrs. Hughes, welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me to speak. As you know, I represent Algoma, Manitoula, Kapuskasing, but this isn't about me. It's about the riding itself and its representation in Northern Ontario. We don't know who will represent these ridings. The readjustment of these electoral districts should not present a threat to smaller and rural northern communities whose voices could be lost if the redistribution exercise focuses mostly on population growth. Algoma, Manitoula, and Kapuskasing also experience population growth, as has Northern Ontario as a whole, although not quite as quickly as the more populous South. Jack Layton, when he came to my riding, I remember he would say, I don't understand. Northern Ontario is huge. And he felt that he could do his entire length of his riding in a half an hour on his bike, but he couldn't get around Northern Ontario. It shows you how huge this area is. Northern Ontario also represents 88% of the landmass of the province, and with the current proposal, it would be represented by just over 7% of Ontario's electoral districts. That is a significant disparity in geographic representation.
The Supreme Court has previously ruled in the 1991 Carter decision that Canadian democracy is rooted in the ability for citizens to be effectively represented, with Justice McLaughlin stating, effective representation and good government in this country compel that factors other than voter parity, such as geography and community interest, be taken into account in setting electoral boundaries. These are all principles that are laid out in the Electoral Boundaries Readjustment Act. However, I believe that the Commission has not placed enough focus on geography and community of interest when finalizing their report. Algoma, Manitoula, and Kapuskasing is comprised of a vast geography encompassing many communities of interest, including distinct Francophone communities, many First Nations, and a diverse collection of small towns and rural communities. To give you an idea, the riding has 40 municipalities, some of which are comprised of multiple towns, 17 First Nations, a number of unorganized townships such as Salton, Folliet, Willisville. Is there an issue? Oh.
There's not an
Whitefish
issue. If you
Falls,
can just
Hop
slow down
Junction,
a
and
bit.
more. I
Thank
did
you.
provide my my presentation as well in both official languages. Sorry about that. In Northern Ontario, communities often lack the infrastructure that is available to people in other regions of the province, including access to Service Canada and other governmental offices and agencies, unlike what they have in Southern Ontario, including high-speed internet and cellular services and public transportation. Reducing the number of electoral districts would be detrimental to those citizens. I am concerned that the current proposal to eliminate Algoma, Manitoulin, Kapuskasing as an electoral district will disenfranchise people from the electoral process, as well as the recruitment, as was mentioned by my colleague from Sudbury, of potential candidates for offices, especially women or young people. I should also note that the final proposal from the Electoral Boundaries Commission of Ontario, while based on some of the feedback received during the consultation period, as it related to their initial report, differs greatly from their initial proposal and has not received public feedback itself. To make such sweeping changes to even the initial proposal without giving citizens the opportunity to voice their concern is concerning. As I close my initial remark, I urge this committee to reconsider the drastic changes in Northern Ontario. If we look at Brampton, for example, they're putting in the 6 MP. We're talking about 265 square kilometers, and there's currently 5 MPPs as well that represent that area. So they have a lot more resources. I'm not saying they shouldn't have more representation. What I'm saying is it's not equitable compared to what we have to travel in Northern Ontario and represent.
Thank you for that. I do acknowledge that you were all really good to provide your comments to interpreters beforehand. They do still need to read it into the record, and that's just where sometimes the disconnect happens. And I was listening to the French, and it's a long title, and Kapuskasing just isn't something that people say all the time, but maybe we should say it more often. With that, we're going to go into 6-minute rounds, and we'll start with Mrs. Gladue.
And thank you to our witnesses for being here today. Just a little procedural thing before we start. I noticed that Mr. Suray's submission was submitted on the 10th of the month, and Mr. Garneau has signed it, but he stepped down as MP on the 8th. So do we have to have like a unanimous consent motion or anything to consider it? Because I'm sure he could get a signature from any one of us here. Like, I didn't know if that's a deal or not, Chair. Okay, fine. All right, well then let me go into my questions, and I'll start off with Mr. Suray. So there's a number of places within your riding, Garson, Falconbridge, Skeed, etc., that you mentioned are going to be impacted. Are these separate municipalities, or who do they pay taxes to, I guess?
No, thanks for the clarification and the question. The city of Sudbury has been amalgamated 22 years ago. There were 7 municipalities. Now there's 1 municipality and 12 wards. So these areas now are wards. So basically, there's 12 wards. I have 6 wards, and Vivian has 6 wards, and we have 1 mayor. But that area that we're talking about, Coniston, had its own council. Now it has two councillors that I cited in the report.
And to Mr. Angus, you talked about the growth rate of Northern Ontario wouldn't keep up with the rest of the province. And I know we heard that the GTA is growing at 6% and the rest of Ontario at 13%. What's the growth rate in Northern Ontario?
I think we've been growing at just above 2%. However, in the last few years, we've seen a significant increase. We were stopped a bit by COVID, but particularly South Asian immigration, Francophone immigration from Africa. There's been a big promotion to bring, to maintain a balance between English-speaking and Francophone. So all of our communities are now, since the last census, seen a huge transformation in terms of the multicultural presence. So all of those communities are growing, particularly the larger ones. Some of that is not reflected in the statistics, but there's no way those communities will ever, Kirkland Lake is simply never going to be able to grow as fast as Mississauga.
Very good. And one of the things I noted was that all of you in the North did a great job at the beginning of looking for the status quo and sending letters, and a lot of your community sent letters. But the Commission didn't seem to listen to that with the redraw. So what new information are you bringing forward that you think will convince them? And we'll go one at a time, right from Charlie over to Vivian.
Well, when they came to Timmins, the commission came up to me and asked if I had suggestions. And I knew they were looking to increase our population. Like I said, my riding is there's 44 other ridings that are smaller population than mine. And I offered them, for example, the Timiskaming Shores region, which would add 13,000 people. I offered to take in the Ring of Fire region, which is extremely isolated, but we already represent some of those communities. So then I was shocked that the whole agricultural district was just taken apart and moved. And we had no involvement in that. Nobody was aware of that. But they'd asked for suggestions on how do we work with them, and we gave them suggestions, again, based on communities of interest, particularly on the Francophone and agricultural sectors, which is growing along Highway 11. And then we get this back, and then we're told this is the final plan. So I have to go back to now the farm communities and say, guess what? Matheson, Valgagne, Cochrane, that are all connected to Timiskaming, you guys are now in different electoral districts. And they say, where did that come from?
And Ms. Hughes.
Well, as you saw, I mean, a lot of our arguments are similar because it's a huge ride. These are huge ridings. I mean, the demographics are there. And as I've indicated as well, there wasn't, we weren't against certain changes. I mean, Folliet could easily go into the Timmins area. We can't make up population. It's 2.8% is how approximately that we have been growing in the north. And the amount of consultations as well didn't really allow for these communities to really participate because there was one in Timmins. There was none in my riding at all. There was one in Timmins, one in Thunder Bay, one in, there wasn't even one in Sudbury, which is the largest community. So anyhow, yeah, so I think that, certainly the process is there. I mean, I know that they were really looking to see how best to do this, but their focus from the beginning was to remove that seat from Northern Ontario. And as I said, and as was mentioned by Mr. Sheehan, is that, what is applied in one area wasn't really applied in this area here. So we need to rethink about how we actually do these ridings. I know that there might be some legislative process that we would need to do to do this in the future, but the Commission does have a responsibility to ensure that individuals, that these communities have the representation that they need and that they deserve based on those other factors other than population. And I just want to add as well, sorry, if I may, is that the Commission actually in this round has basically taken Sagamok away from Massey. Can I finish that thought? And so Massey and Webwood is the community of the township of Sable Spanish River, and Sagamok, you cross the bridge and it's just a bridge that divides them, so you can't really split them up. And take them away. I understand the Commission's thought of trying to put all the Indigenous communities from that tribal council together, but it doesn't make sense to split up those communities.
Next round. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And someone who does occupy the Speaker's chair every so often, perhaps you'll remember this courtesy, Mrs. Hughes, the next time I'm on my feet in the House.
I'm going to raise that in the House.
It was about 28 seconds, just for the record, so that you can maybe meet me halfway. Mrs. Sahota.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think it was a very good line of questioning. I'm really interested in learning more about the growth, although maybe slower, there is still growth. I'm surprised by that. I actually didn't realize that there was growth happening in Northern Ontario. I appreciate the offer to increase my staffing in my riding. If only you had the power, I wish I could take you up on that. My constituency riding work is very intense, but listening to all of the panelists today, I sympathize with how difficult representing northern rural ridings must be, having to travel such large distances. And I know that we don't serve the geography necessarily, but however, the smaller communities that you do serve are so far apart from each other, and in order to serve them, you have to travel through those geographic locations to get to them, to be able to listen to them. And So I would love to learn for the members that didn't get to speak so far, Ms. Lapointe, Mr. Saray, and Mr. Sheenan. Could you let me know exactly in your writings what the growth has been like, what challenges you find in terms of how many communities you serve, how long does it take you to be able to get to those communities? And it was also mentioned by Ms. Hughes that there hadn't been consultations that were accessible to the public in your areas. Could you shed some more light as to where the consultations were located in your writings and whether there were virtual options, were there issues with the virtual options, I guess the many challenges that your region must face? Go ahead, Mr. Saray.
Oh, Mr. Saray.
It doesn't matter. Okay, well, okay, so a number of things in there. First, there was in-person consultation in Timmins, which is a 3.5-hour drive from and then just from my area, then 6 hours in all areas. So, and the affected riding was Algoma, Kappa-Casing, like even another 5-6 hours. You know, so it was just. And nothing wrong with Timmins, having the consultation in Timmins, but it wasn't the affected riding. So it was bizarre how that, you know, and we tried to have that change. There was virtual options, which is difficult in some areas, don't have high-speed internet. And the commission did add at the end because there was so many submissions. Like in my package here, you saw the number of submissions. Just Nickelbelt received like the second largest number of submissions from any riding in Ontario, but essentially you see here colleges objected, mayors, you know, organizations, Francophone, First Nations. So there was a large, and also to Marilyn's point on Ruby, 2012, the commission stayed the status quo on the 10 seats. And so why in 10 years they changed it is because they say it's their mandate of one additional seats in Ontario. And that's why the recommendation for something new, for example, is a larger riding that has 140,000 population or 150, add 2 staff. You could deal with that to deal with their population, but you can't split an MP in 2. And also what was said here in rural areas, there's a large number of, and I'll mention a party, PPC votes in Northern Ontario because people are disenfranchised with the political system. So the increase in votes, and look at it, it was close to 10% in Nickelbelt on the PPC side. So rural areas are being, and now that's going to be even worse now because of the 10 seats, and we're going to go to 9 seats. So to answer that question as far as the representation itself, and it's a big issue for us moving forward.
Mr. Sheenan?
I think that, you're asking about the growth, the 2.8%. That's amazing. I've spent my life in business and economic development in Northern Ontario, and we always were below growth. Like, we didn't have any growth. And the growth is from Indigenous populations, immigration. We have newcomers coming, not just to school, but to live. And they're choosing Northern Ontario as their first destination, and it's great. And we're seeing so many, really cool things happening all across there. But what I'm afraid, and I mentioned this before, was that, and in particular, we saw some other growth too during COVID-19. People that were jammed in large urban centers that may have lived in Northern Ontario have chosen to return, and that trend started, and you're seeing it more and more and more when you're communicating with residents in Northern Ontario. And that trend's not going to stop because people can do things virtually. They can combine virtual with in-person stuff too as well. So my point being is 2.8%. That is mega huge for Northern Ontario. And my fear is that this, what the Commission has done, is going to negatively affect that growth. And we do not want to backslide. So I hope I answered your question on the growth piece. So I'll turn it to Vivian.
I'll just say that from the beginning of this process, we all came together and have addressed the Commission's report as a collectivity. And our position, though, was never status quo. We understand the Commission's work and the very difficult task before it. There are some regions that have population growth, some have population decline, and that is why it's embedded in the Act that electoral boundaries be reviewed every 10 years. So we were always willing and to work with the Commission to look at some riding changes. I think what is different and new for us is that, can I continue? Okay, is that the Commission created 2 new additional extraordinary circumstances ridings. And as we know, when you make decisions, it's a domino effect to other ridings. And I would suggest to you that it created a really severe domino effect to the Northeast.
Thank you. Madame Gaudreau.
Ms. Gaudreau, thank you, Madam Chair. Colleagues, I want to say that we have here today an example of copy and paste. It's a demonstration of what has happened a month ago, and I am so discouraged. I'll explain what I mean. We've listened to what the criteria are: the scope of the territory, services. I mean, there are people who are there, but it requires a budget to serve them. The ability to have internet. Well, internet has to be there. Fairness. Fairness in representation. And on top of that here, we're being told that during the consultations, and I experienced this in Laurentides-Labelle, which is a lot smaller than Abitibi-Témiscamingue, and allow me to say that there were individuals who had to drive 2 hours to be heard, and they also didn't have internet. So, just so you know, everyone's been talking about criteria and thresholds, and the criteria exist. So the issue isn't that there are no criteria for representation, but this is an issue of priorities. I'm already thinking about the next time. And please, I hope that I would say that because people can hear us, because they can read, I would hope that all these objections are being heard. They're valid. They're justified. You know, further consultations have been requested, more information has been requested, and I want to tell you why I'm so unhappy. I also made a proposal. I completely disagreed with having to drive thousands and thousands of kilometers in Quebec and have one less riding. Rather than have areas chopped up, the community was listened to. So I would hope that we're going to be heard, that we're going to be heard before 10 years goes by again. I'm so concerned for your sake, for everyone's sake. I'm so discouraged. Here we are Thursday with a little bit of time left. So I want to know, if you were going to set priorities, what would you do with the criteria? Because we're talking about services to your citizens. Well, first, the 116,000 being applied everywhere in Ontario is absolutely unacceptable. We've heard from Franco-Ontarians. They want to make sure that their communities of interest are respected, whether it be in Sudbury, all these Francophone community groups. And so setting 116,000 is not acceptable. Now, there was a reference to Bowie. Do you know, money is given, yes, to rural areas, but I think there should be money also provided to those ridings of 140,000 so that we can maintain our ridings with less people as well. I think that's something that can be done. So we don't want just 8 ridings for the next 10 years.
I've been through 3 rounds, and in Northern Ontario, it has been traumatic. I was elected after they ripped apart the ridings the last time. It took 10 years to build a community of interest. And then they suddenly say, well, that community of interest no longer exists. And we're just going to move. So the Kapuskasing region, which is heavily Francophone, fought for a long time to have its voice heard. Now it's going to be thrown in with Timmins, and then all my other communities are taken out. And so I'll just say quickly, what we need to do in the future is the Commission has to come forward and say, what are people thinking? Because there are ways, none of our ridings make sense. They're all arbitrary and crazy. We've learned to work with them. We would have probably brought a lot of opportunities to say these communities of interest. We've talked amongst ourselves. None of that happened. They said this is what it's going to be. Then when there was overwhelming objection, overwhelming from every single economic, community, cultural organization, political bodies, overwhelming. There was no ability for people to be heard. Like, again, it's outrageous in Northern Ontario that someone had to drive 6 hours at night on Northern Ontario roads to get from Sault Ste. Marie to be heard in Timmins, and they wouldn't even go to the ridings that were being cut. So there needs to be pre-discussion, come forward with a plan, and then let citizens have options.
Oui, alors, je suis d'accord.
I absolutely agree with my colleagues. In Northern Ontario, it's very difficult to provide services. I have community clinics that I travel to these communities, but one must also not forget that it's very difficult for us to travel as well. So we're spread thin, and now we're going to be spread even thinner. I have to drive at least 6 hours to get here, get to Ottawa. I can't necessarily take flights because it's a very bad schedule of flights that exists there. So what do? Well, we go there Friday night. We have Saturday to travel, and then we have to come back on Sunday. There was a new riding that was suggested. What would have happened? Well, the member would have arrived, and then he would have had to leave the same day to get back because there are no flight choices. So that proposal does not provide representation. And we have to keep representation top of mind, real representation.
Mrs. Blaney.
Well, thank you, and I thank you to everyone testifying today. My first question is going to be for MP Angus. Is your opposition to cutting a seat in Northern Ontario, is it about protecting your own riding?
I think that's a very fair question. I think those are questions we always have to consider. And obviously, we check the poll data based on what we're going to face. In the new riding, I pick up a 19-point win based on electoral votes over the second-place party. But I'm not here for me, because I'm thinking, who the hell is ever going to want to run in that riding when I'm gone? That's the issue. It is about representation. So I win better, but we lose bigger. And I just want to say quickly, we've talked about distance. We haven't talked about the fact that many of my communities have no roads. Do you know it's cheaper for you to fly to Portugal for the weekend and stay in a hotel with your spouse than for one of my citizens from Peawanuck to come to my constituency office in Timmins? The cost of flying just to get to my office for one of my citizens usually is above $2,000 to $3,000. There's no other way to get to my office, so I have to rent planes to go there.
Well, thank you for that. And I think this is the important part. I have a rural riding as well, and I have quite a few hours. I'm on an island, and I represent part of the mainland. And I know there's a lot of communities in my riding that are accessible only by float plane or boat that do not have the services. So they have to travel a significant amount of time to get basic services. So I think what you all talked about was the fact that your offices provide services to people that an urban riding would never have to provide because there is no other resource. So I'm just wondering if you could talk about the importance of that and what it means to lose a seat in this region for people to try to access those services. And Mr. or Madame Hughes, I'll start with you.
Well, I mean, certainly that is a challenge, right? So for people to be able to access our services, and we've been getting tons of immigration. I understand that the urban areas certainly get that as well, but it's more challenging for us because we don't have as much of the resources as they do in the bigger centers. And so for individuals, as Charlie has said, the travel is substantial. I have to fly to Sudbury or Sault Ste. Marie or Sudbury in order to be able to get, and it's still a couple of hours drive into my riding to go to one of my offices. And so in order to provide proper representation to individuals, yes, we need better budgets, but we also need to make sure that the MPs are able to get to those constituents to be able to provide those types of services. And as was mentioned over and over again, this is about representation, this is about in Parliament, and it's about representation for individuals themselves.
Anyone else from the table want to answer the question?
I'll add some stuff to the two comments before. You know, Sault Ste. Marie itself has excellent internet connection, high speed, some top stuff. We have the Ontario Lottery Gaming Corporation. We have a huge backbone in there. I was able to do my presentation virtually to the Commission, and I pointed out to them too as well, though. I said, but if you just drive north of Sault Ste. Marie towards Wawa, internet is non-existent in most places. Cell service is non-existent in most places. And that highway is closed so many times in the winter, if anybody has ever driven across Highway 17. And not for hours, but for days sometimes. And, you know, it's about fairness, it's about equity, it's about representation. And I draw that not only in the winter, but, you know, for all of Northern Ontario, highway collisions, it's not a 4-lane, it's 2-lane. And highway collisions with wildlife take a lot of lives. And it's very, 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 very unfortunate. So in creating less representation and going down, it's forcing, as the other two speakers have mentioned, for people to drive and travel more. That's a safety issue. It's also an issue about equity, you know, rich versus poverty. Well, some people can afford a satellite, you know, connection. But in many places in Northern Ontario, it's very difficult to get because of the storms, and it's unreliable. My point being is it's about equity, and taking a seat away is not proper. And the biggest problem is we're comparing Northern Ontario to Southern Ontario, has been mentioned by Mr. Soraya, and it's about population. But Northern Ontario has more in common probably with Northern Quebec, Northern Saskatchewan, Northern Alberta, and all the North regions. And there, the Commission applies different mathematical formulas. So wherever you live in this great country, you should be treated the same.
If I may add just a bit of time, obviously the higher population of seniors and transportation issues and internet, as indicated, and what was mentioned about representation. Last time Northern Ontario lost a seat was 2004, and it was my uncle Ben Seri. It was Timiskaming Cochrane that was divided, and federally there was 10 seats in 2004. Provincially there was 11 seats, because they used to match provincially, federally. Then the Ontario government did a consultation, pre-consultation, and I'm sure you saw that in your reports, and I referenced it in my report, that they did a consultation prior, and they added 13 provincial seats in Northern Ontario. Now we're down to 9. So why is federally, federal government or the federal institution, we're not having the same representation as the provincial? They got 13 MPPs, we got 9, and we're going to get 8 the next time. It's really, really, hopefully, asking you to really push back in a united and strong way, please.
Thank you. We will now just have a quick couple minutes for anybody who has outstanding questions. Mrs. Gladue.
Thanks so much. I just want to return to the question that said, you know, the Commission was given a bunch of information. They didn't appear to listen. What new information would you put forward that they should hear? Start with Mr. Saray.
Well, as indicated earlier, they receive submissions from colleges, from mayors, from institutions, from the community, and as I indicated, 2004, 2012. The new information today that we're struggling to try and bring, but I mean, one of it is the issue of, can you make a recommendation as a PROC committee to Bowie to relook at how we fund MP offices? As I indicated earlier, you know, 140,000 population, 150,000 population, adding a few extra staff may be helpful to service your constituents versus Northern Ontario. You're adding a bit more monies, but it's not going to help an MP. We can't service the area. You can't get 2 MPs. So,
Mr. Sheehan.
Well, thank you very much. And I think that the Commission answered their own question. And really, in my opening remarks, and I made that statement, is they created special circumstances and allowed
half of Northern Ontario to exceed the 25% variance. And they acknowledged the challenges. But in doing that, they made the rest of Northern Ontario have those challenges. And in excess of those challenges, and I pointed to an MP that would have to, they said, would have to drive the Thunder Bay circuit and back would be 1,000 kilometers. Well, in creating the Sault Ste. Marie-Algoma riding, it's 1,300. So it's flawed. So I say to them, it applies special circumstance to all of Northern Ontario, not half of it.
And Ms. Lapointe.
I would echo what MP Sheehan said. Is there was an extraordinary circumstance riding in the Northwest. In the original, that existed already. In the original report of the Commission, they did not speak to creating additional ones. The final report, they created 2 new extraordinary circumstances. So there are now 3 ridings in the Northwest. And so, as I said, that created a significant domino effect to the Northeast. They should look at the situation as a whole for Northern Ontario.
Just one real quick point I just wanted to make, and I want to draw to the attention of this committee that all 10 MPs and including the Conservative MPs, we penned a letter and had their support to keep the status quo, if you will, the 10 ridings. Okay, so I just wanted to draw that to the attention. Sorry.
No, very good point. I think I'm going to share it the rest of the time with my colleagues, right?
So generous. Monsieur Fergus.
Madame Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'd like to thank all the members who came before us today. I truly do empathize with your situation. I can't quite believe that the number of ridings can be reduced here given the breadth of your ridings. It's bizarre. Charlie, you said yours is bigger than France. And, I thought a riding bigger than Belgium was big. I have 2 questions. Are you unanimous on the status quo? Second, what is the actual impact on Francophone communities in each of your communities or ridings? Well, yes, we are unanimous on the status quo, but we were and are open to some changes. Now, in terms of your second question on the impact on Franco-Ontarians, well, there's Wawa, Dubreuilville, which will now be with Sault Ste. Marie, and what that does is dilute the Francophone population because right now they're with Kapuskasing, Hearst. So that will reduce services. And in Sault Ste. Marie, well, that wasn't the city that was
at first. There was a lot of challenges there, but, I just think that at the end of the day, it's about the dilution of the Francophone community. The question before that was what is new? The new thing is that we've been provided with a different changes than what was actually originally proposed, so we haven't had an opportunity to consult. First Nations were not consulted on the changes that are going to be impacting for one of the ridings in Thunder Bay, some of them that are being taken away. And again, when I look at Sagamok being split away from Massey and Webwood, that is problematic. That is very problematic. So that's what I would add at this point.
Perhaps I can just add in terms of the Francophone population. In my submission, the Francophone Association of Ontario actually on the 25th of September submitted recommendations, and there were recommendations to keep the same number of seats as the provincial seats. And they looked at Francophone representation per riding. Nickel Belt is 35%, and the Commission has reduced that to 33%. Timmins Bay James, it's 25%. Algoma, 23%, Sudbury, 16%, Timiskaming, 13%. So these are the largest areas. And now these Francophones will be divided up, and those divisions will be worse than they were before. versus what the Francophone Association has said, and other Francophone associations, which is that these areas should be maintained the way they are, because, as Charlie said earlier, these relationships had to be built up over time, and now they're being divided up. And once again,
La région de Hearst.
Hearst, Kapuskasing, I would say the Francophone population is about 90%, and they're going to lose that in Parliament. So in Northern Ontario, we have a vibrant Francophone community, and it's very important that that be protected. In my riding, I can tell you that Sudbury is a welcoming, is a place that welcomes immigration. We're one of the most important areas for immigration. And these changes should not have as a result to reduce the importance of the Francophone communities in Ontario.
I wanted to add too as well. My sister was principal of Saint-Joseph, French immersion school in Wawa, and you know, it makes no sense that we're starting to separate these communities of interest. A lot of them, they're schoolmates. They go to school together. They play hockey together. You know, they go to church together. But we're separating the Francophone communities with these mathematical formulas, and this does not make sense.
Excellent. Madame Goudreau.
Ms. Goudreau. Well, I had finished, but now that I've heard what was said, I need to speak. The provinces are even establishing changes based on the criteria that we know. Well, that, to me, is a signal that we should follow those same trends. Now, I understand that we're at the very last stage, but I'm just going to hammer home my message, which is that your submissions and recommendations need to be heard. I hope they will be heard, because it's clear that something is missing. An entire stage is missing. And you're not the only ones. There are others who have been presented with something completely different. So something's missing. There has to be room for feedback. I think with what we have and everything you raised, we can include this. I think you have to send anything more that you may have. Something has to happen. It's not just because a number was decided on that number has to be the new status quo. So if any of you have anything to say about that, go ahead. Well, what I would say is this. There has to be an opportunity to reestablish fairness in Northern Ontario, and that time is now. There will be a domino effect with these changes, but we can act now before these changes take place. We're talking about one seat in Northern Ontario. In order to preserve those 10 seats and preserve representation. So it's not just about preserving 10 seats, it's about preserving representation and the rights of these voters. So, as I mentioned, I don't have anything against Brampton, but I'm just giving you an example of where you have an ability to walk out your door, walk 2 blocks, and then you can get to your member's office. Whereas in Northern Ontario, you can't do that. So I would ask that the Commission take another look at this and act for the good of Northern Ontario. Thank you.
Questions quickly?
I don't know if my connection is working well, Chair. If you could let me know if my sound is okay.
Your sound is okay. Your screen is slow.
Okay. So my last question is just for advice from these folks about how the Commission could work more inclusively with rural communities in terms of consultation.
I've gone through this 3 times. and it's been traumatic every time. And the problem was, in Northern Ontario, we had to prove to very doubting commissioners that we had a right to representation. So you start with a flawed premise. In 2010, the decision was that they were just going to rip the agricultural region apart because agricultural didn't matter. They were looking at numbers. And there was a huge blowback. We had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of letters to say the Highway 11 agricultural region had to be maintained because they're growing. This is a growing region. They're all connected, and so if they're connected economically and culturally, they're connected politically. And so we brought that. We assumed in the first round that this region wasn't going to be ripped apart because they were ripping everything else apart. And then in the second round, they ripped the agricultural region in half to make up for their arbitrary things. So the problem is we have no ability to come to the table fair and square because we don't know what the rules of the game are. We know we have to prove, and then they say, well, these are the rules. And we quote the Supreme Court, we quote the legislation. But we're never given the chance to sort of lay out and discuss what are fair questions. How should ridings be set up? Because none of our ridings make sense. But we are never at that table. We're always playing defensive.
Maybe just quickly, Madam Chair, the recommendation was what the province did in 2012. Why can't the federal government do that? And again, because 2004, you read the report. It's similar to the report in October 2022. And the representation of what the province did, if we don't do that shortly, is exactly what Charlie just said. In the next round, there's not going to be representation. The First Nations, and just remember, Northern Ontario is not just 90%. There's 110 First Nations in Northern Ontario. How many were consulted? A handful. And it's really sad. And it's going to repeat itself. It has been repeating itself. So, and the province took it upon themselves to do this prior. It was 3 years prior to the redistribution. Now, what people in Northern Ontario are really afraid of, now the province will follow the federal model, which is really, really worrisome.
Excellent. That brings us to time, and I do want to thank you all for being here. Just for the purpose of our report, we do ask 6 questions. I know it's sometimes challenging to be concise. What I would like to hear from each of you quickly is, who are your neighbors? Who does your boundary attach to? Have you consulted them? And do they agree? I hear your comment, so it does not need to be repeated, about the status quo and the number of ridings, and you're all in agreement. I'm asking, have you consulted your neighbors, and do they agree with why you're here? Mr. Angus?
Yes, I've consulted my neighbors in regions that are much larger than Europe.
Same. I've spoken with the folks in the Northwest. Right from the get-go, we've been communicating, and I mentioned that there's a letter that emphasizes that, and I just point to the fact that it blows me away that my neighbor, Thunder Bay North, which will be here on the one side, the one house, will have the above 25% variance. And be a special circumstance, but yet the neighbor right next door.
So, Mr. Sheehan, I'm hearing from you, you have consulted your neighbors, yes. And yes, they agree. Excellent. Mrs. Hughes?
I'll just say there is a letter on file that we had submitted that all MPs in Northern Ontario were supportive of maintaining the 10 seats in Northern Ontario.
Mrs. Hughes, my question is in regards to your boundary changes that you're proposing. Have you spoken to the neighboring colleagues, and do they agree? Yes or no? If you've not spoken to them, that's cool.
Well, we've spoken, we've met. We didn't just do a letter. Yes. We actually met with the initial proposal, and with this proposal, we've had discussions as well.
Mr. Charest?
Yeah, as indicated, we've been meeting on a regular basis on the proposed changes. So correct, yes, we are in agreement.
Madame Lapointe?
So to my specific writing, I don't oppose the changes that the Commission made. In terms of Northern Ontario, we have worked as a group to voice our concerns over the diminishing 1 seat.
With that, we would like to thank you for your time and attention. If there's anything else you would like to submit, please submit it to the clerk, and we will distribute it amongst members. With that, can I let them go? Whenever we start looking at the draft report, you need it here from the day before. That's how good your
So
answers
we'll keep
were
an
in
eye
that
on
case.
it. Okay,
so,
we'll keep an eye
yeah.
on you.
Best wishes to you. Have a great day. Thank you so much, Mr. Turnbull.
Just before, I know I don't want to keep us too long. I know that we had a pretty good list. Sorry to the interpreters, I knocked the microphone. We had a pretty good list of witnesses that were due to come to the committee at our last meeting. That meeting was canceled. I was just wondering from the chair, and I just wanted to express from my perspective, it would be really great to get those rescheduled as soon as possible. I'm eager to be able to ask some of those witnesses the questions. And so I wondered whether that was being made a priority in terms of our schedule. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Turnbull. Noted, and yes, we will try to prioritize to have those witnesses come. We also have been slotting in other witnesses. Otherwise, we're continuously playing this game of canceling meetings. So we just need to work with their schedules. We would love to have all witnesses come. And so, yes, we'll work on that. I hope that satisfies your eagerness. Yes. Perfect. Have a great day. Meeting adjourned. See you next week.